ano que passa se tornado cada vez mais inclusivo, eu diria. Brent, did you understand? Do you have anything to
Understand completamente. Eu tenho. I have to say this that yeah, we do about 20 plays a year, as you say, and there's a certain percentage that, like, there's a Latino play, like you said, and we have this, and everybody in the Kentucky cycle has to learn a Kentucky accent. However, é uma coisa de poder, porque o acento, se você quer trocar um acento ou adoptar um acento de Kentucky, and you're like a black or Latino person, and you can take on a Kentucky accent. If you're white, you cannot take on a black accent or a Latino accent on stage. It's a problem of power. Just like it's not the same for a woman to play a man's role on stage as it is for a man to play a woman's role, because we don't have this equilibrium. It's men and women. It's not men and women. It's men and women. It's whites and blacks. We have power. So it's not the same for a white person to take on a different role. So we don't have this exchange of culture, this exchange of dialects as possible. Now, also, it's not the same for a black student, a black actor, to get cast in the Kentucky cycle and suddenly be able to play a role, as it is for a black actor to play a role written by a black playwright for black culture. That's something that, but that está cambiando, está trocando agora. Estamos em caminho de cambiar tudo isso, trocar tudo isso. We're changing it. Especially now we have Anita Dashiell Sparks. I think you remember her, Gianluca. Yes. She was an African-American professor we have. She's our now vice dean in charge of equity, diversity, and inclusion. All of us are looking at our curriculum. We're looking at the plays. Are we including curriculum that's non-Eurocentric? Are we including now plays for actors? In my voice class, Gianluca, you remember we did haiku. I think we did short Japanese poetry. Now I do a short poetry from a variety of authors, including a lot of black and brown authors from the United States. And our students are very happy to have that alternative. It's not that Shakespeare is not important, it is, but there's also James Baldwin is important, and all the other actors and playwrights of color are important. So this has become a commitment around the world. And there's a movement called White Theater, We See You. It's by black actors, black producers, and black audience members who are challenging white American theater to change our shows, to change what we're doing. Culture it can't be only led by people in power, but people in power have a great role to play in changing the cultural dynamics. Just like Donald Trump could have saved hundreds of thousands of lives from COVID-19 if he had led with a culture of let's wear masks. But instead he led with a culture of fear and of abnegation of reality. And just like in Brazil, I know you understand this, we have people who followed the culture of whatever is being put in front of you. If we only offer white plays and white examples, we will only ever see white people foregrounded. So this is changing now.
E uma coisa que eu gostaria de adicionar é que durante essa pandemia a gente teve convidado para painel que é Ted Sarandos, que é o COO da Netflix, Chief of Content. E ele disse que o que a Netflix procura hoje em dia, como exemplo de streaming, é justamente a diversidade e a originalidade local. Se eles forem produzir um show no Brasil, eles querem que seja algo bem brasileiro, bem da cultura do Rio de Janeiro, se o show se passar no Rio, ou se o show se passar em São Paulo, eles querem uma coisa bem paulista, porque hoje em dia o Brasil é o segundo maior mercado da Netflix, e o Brasil é o segundo maior mercado da Netflix, então eles estão produzindo cada vez mais conteúdo original no Brasil e eles querem trazer essa missão da diversidade também. E nos Estados Unidos, no México, hoje em dia também eles têm mais de 50 produções no mundo inteiro. E realmente o objetivo hoje em dia desses streaming services é a originalidade, a representação, porque é o que o Brent falou, tem muitas peças, muitos autores de origem branca europeia, em que hoje em dia eles querem mudar isso e essa mudança está acontecendo.
Não, sem dúvida. We can see it, we can feel it also here in Brazil. In fact, we have also mediatic movements here that are claiming for a more presence of Afro-Brazilian people there, people from different sexual orientations there also. So we are facing the same things here in Brazil. In fact, as in the politics, it seems that we're now having things, a lot of things in common. And I hope on 2022 that we have elections here, we go to the same way that you did just now in the USA.
Eu acho que sim também. I hope so. I hope so. I will say this, two things if I want to add to this conversation. You know, the first is when you change cultural representation, you change collective imagination. Indigenous people are not significant if we don't see indigenous people's stories. So the Amazons will continue to be burnt and devastated and decimated and wiped out unless indigenous people's stories start to capture our collective imagination. Same in our country. We have the indigenous Native American people's stories. When they're not heard, we build pipelines through their properties and we steal their land, and they just they don't matter to us. When queer people such as myself don't matter, when our stories aren't told, then we die of HIV/AIDS. Nobody spends government money to try and find solutions, and nobody cares if we can marry or not. But when our stories started to be told, like in a TV show called Glee, when young people saw this show and they saw young gay people and trans people, within 5 years, we had gay marriage. That kind of cultural shift happens because we actors are starting to tell our own stories. That's the first thing I wanted to say. The second thing is the foundation of actor training is still the same. It surmounts the differences in culture. For us, the colonizing actor training was, here's the right way to sound, and you shall sound this way, and you shall act to tell the story. You make choices, an actor makes choices, and you go forward. It's like the actors driving the boat, driving the car, and making choices and selecting, doing your homework, selecting which action verbs you want to play and which emotions you're going to play through. The world of Uta Hagen and all the other actors since Stanislavski flipped that upside down. They said actors don't make choices. Actors open up their hearts to let the story make choices. Let the story play you. All the time we think acting is we play the story. We're playing pretend. In this work that we're in, black, brown, white, otherwise, when you stop and you allow the story to play you, then you have to open up your heart, you have to open up your belly, you have to become vulnerable and then accept the circumstances. So as Hamlet, I accept that I was away in England studying for 10 years and I have not seen Denmark. I accept that my father died. And then I have to make that a reality for me. I accept that I'm in love with Ophelia. Even though I'm gay, I accept that I, in this role, am in love with Ophelia, and I let that break my heart. I accept that Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are good friends, that I don't suspect are going to betray me. So when we're in that conversation and it seems like they're betraying me, I'm surprised, authentically surprised. Then this is not acting. This is allowing the story to tell you, not you telling the story. And when all of us adopt this kind of humility, and that we are not so important, but the story is really important, then we see political change, we see cultural change, we start to listen more than we talk. You know, that's for me what very much interests me is when my students like Jean-Luc in a voice class, I'm saying, you know, let your belly go, let your jaw relax, make this real for you. What's happened and what does it do to you? If the thought of a little dog dying in your scene, if that makes you weep so much that you giggle, then you start to giggle and laugh. And what a beautiful thing that is. So this is, we are in a colonizing era. We are colonials once again when we start to tell stories and control that space. But when we release control, we enter into this post-colonial era of, I don't know what's going to happen next, and I can't wait to find out.
That's very poetic. And as I could understand, you're talking about emotions, no? That actors should be open for the emotions that the story brings them, and then they can react to this story. Yeah, I totally agree with you. If we could apply this to our normal life, maybe things would change more quickly. You know?
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Everybody should train to be actors. Everybody. not reality show performers.
Yeah. That's amazing. And Brent, how about the experience that you had? You mentioned that you have been in Ukraine and other countries. Do you feel actors, I mean, the professional actors, the professional of acting, are they different from the background of these countries also?
So different. But look, I mean, I have to be honest, a lot of my work in Ukraine, in Rwanda, is with non-actors. I'm working with people, like in Ukraine in 2014, I was working with people in the revolution, people in the Maidan movement who were pushing Russia off and trying to get new leadership in Ukraine. And they did. I'm going back there in August to see how it's changed since in this, 8 years, 7 years. But in India, with Jonathan Skriti, I work in Calcutta, in West Bengal, in the eastern part of India, and in rural India. But they have actors there, and they have people who are trained as actors. And there's just an understanding of, the actor as a vessel for the divine. So Krishna, Devi, Vishnu, the gods sort of can speak through you. And then they don't have this fear that we have of occupying an archetype and letting it exaggerate your body and taking it further. We're terribly concerned with what we sometimes call false naturalism. I don't know if this invades Brazilian actor training programs, but I get an actor, he reads a scene, and in an effort not to push it, he ends up doing to be or not to be. That is the question. Whether it is noble in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take a heart. Like he's doing Hamlet into his fingernails because he doesn't want to overact. He doesn't want to. So we call it the paralysis of integrity. You're paralyzed by your sense of that this must be so honest. And in the effort to try to be honest, you're performing honesty and you're not actually honest. When I see, if you're playing in the play Shakespeare wrote Cymbeline, and you're playing Imogen when she has to wake up next to the decapitated body of her lover, you know, and she has to see this body in bed covered in blood with no head, and she thinks it's her lover. There's a circumstance that, like, you have to really open your heart to imagine what would you do in real life if you woke up to next dead body. You would be screaming bloody murder. But what we end up seeing is like, what's this? Could this be my lover? Me. You know, like something, I don't know what it is, but we just end up seeing, no, really? You woke up next to a bloody dead body in your bed and that's it? If you're not having a screaming fit, I don't think you're a human. In real life, we're far more dramatic sometimes than we are on stage, you know. So I think in India and other places in Africa, they're very much less afraid. Oh my God, in Nigeria, it's all so overdone. And we look at it like in Mexico with the telenovelas. We look at that and we go, oh my God, that's just too much. You know, in Mexico, the stereotype is, ay, mi hermano, ay, no dice que no está verdad. No se puede ser, no. You know, and we kind of go, please. So our version is, ay, mi hermano. Ay, dice que no es verdad. And both of them are like extreme versions of non-reality. So I think there's a lot of performativity in other countries because it's escalated to a masquerade or to a spectacle. And some part of theater, I think, should be a spectacle. A lot of theater of the oppressed is very Brechtian. It's very spectacular, you know. But the American theater, we have this thing that Americans do, which is, if I can work against my emotions. So this is like the Keanu Reeves school of acting. I love Keanu Reeves, but like, this is me. I'm really angry right now. I'm really happy. Yeah, I'm sad. Oh, I'm scared. You know, it's all the same.
Mhm. And I do have a question for you, Brent.
Yes.
When you say in contrast that Australian actors and that British actors come to America and they just start getting all the roles, because from what I hear from USC and being in the US in general is that the training in the UK is much more focused on what you say on the craft.
Yes.
Well, in America, it's more towards this false sense of natural.
No, it's not training more in the craft. But what happened is this: UK and Australian actor training, British actor training, used to be very much about the craft. And you would find all 4 octaves of your voice, you know, and you'd sing it, right? Then, just like us, the English actors became enamored of Stanislavski and of Lee Strasberg, and they loved it. And a lot of them went over to Moscow to study. Ian McKellen studied with the Moscow Art Institute. Lots of them went east to study this reality. But they already had the body and physical and vocal training. So they weren't afraid. It's just that now they added a mentality of I accept reality. So now you have like a Helen Mirren, for example. Helen Mirren, who is an amazing actress. But she trained, you see her in early 1970s with Peter Brook, you know, doing work like Mahabharata and other things, long epic pieces. Helen Mirren trained in that stylistic big acting, but she also was very drawn to intercultural influences and to Stanislavski. Helen Mirren's work is phenomenal. Meryl Streep, phenomenal. These people are Robert De Niro, all of them. De Niro studied with Uta Hagen, you know. So these are people who had training, but then they brought it down. And that's why English and Australian actors get there. Because in America, what we did was we saw Stanislavski, and through Lee Strasberg, we thought, oh, Marlon Brando is wonderful. He just mumbles all the time. He's so phenomenal. Who needs voice training? I want to be just like Marilyn Monroe or Marlon Brando. So unfortunately, a lot of us chose to let go of training We don't believe in it. We think, oh, just be yourself. And that's not quite it. That's not what Stanislavski was saying. Stanislavski talked about immense training, that you have to watch a cat to relax and leave your impression on a cushion, because cats, when they really relax, they really let go. Stanislavski was all about yoga and training and voice and everything. And we just took what we liked, and rather lazily, I think we just assumed, oh, just be yourself and you don't need to act. And that's why Australians and Brits are getting all the jobs.
It's a great point. It's a great point. And Brent, do you see any difference of this that you were talking about, this kind of preparation? Is there any difference between theater, movies, television for the preparation of actors?
Of course, they're different mediums. They're different. It's like doing street theater, doing circus, doing anything. It's all, there are different platforms, and there's some respect to different expectations of the level and the size of voice and choices. But let me tell you, authentically from the center, each one of them, if you respond to the story and you worship the story and you allow that story to play you, then it's just a subtle difference between, okay, the camera is this close to me versus the camera is the audience, 20 feet away, 200 feet away. But all of them require this sense of authenticity. When Kristen Linklater trained the actors in England, and then she came to the United States, she worked with Tyrone Guthrie. Tyrone Guthrie built the first thrust proscenium, the thrust stage, when everything was a proscenium arch before. He built in Minneapolis the Guthrie Theater, the thrust stage where the theater came out into the audience. This meant much more of the audience attention is on the actor instead of the scenery. And now you had the older actor Jason Robards. He was a very famous actor in the 1940s and 50s, 30s, 40s, 50s. He was brilliant, but he couldn't be heard beyond the second row. So Kristen's work was to try and get his voice to be heard without losing the authenticity that he had. And that's what her work is predicated on, is to just expand your reality. So I'm always saying to actors, it isn't about one medium requires you to push out more or push less. No, it's about one medium. Your awareness is twofold. You are aware of your story and your circumstances, and threefold. You're aware of your story. You're in the present, under the influence of the story. You're in the presence of your scene partner, your mother, your father, the person you want to kill, the person you want to make love to. That becomes real for you. And then the camera. That's also an awareness that you have. You know that it's this far from you. Or the audience, which is very far back. That's an awareness. Changing that awareness simply amplifies your diaphragm. I have to take that into my diaphragm. That's the space. It's not that I'm pushing the same air out to reach them. It's that I'm allowing in that much bigger of a thought, because I really want them to hear this intimate scene between me and my lover. But they have to hear it. So it's just a matter of awareness. It doesn't change your story. And again, you're not driving the boat. You're letting that away. It's just that you have to also include that as part of the fuel for you.
That's great. That's great. That's great. Well, my friends, we are just getting to the end of our talk here. We are already 50 minutes talking, and it was a fantastic experience here with Brent Blair, with Gianluca Cosentino. Gianluca, seus planos para o futuro, você pretende continuar a tua vida nos Estados Unidos? Você pretende voltar para o Brasil?
Eu acho que depende. Eu tenho um visto ainda válido aqui, então acho que é uma oportunidade eu usar ele até o fim, porque para o Brasil eu posso voltar a qualquer momento.
Sim.
E então, no futuro distante, não sei, mas no momento eu quero usar essa oportunidade de poder trabalhar aqui legalmente.
Fantástico. E trabalhar com interpretação e tudo, é isso?
Isso, atuação.
Fantástico, fantástico. Brent, and you have plans to come to Brazil just after the pandemia?
I have friends in this o centro do Teatro do Oprimido no Brasil. They're always my friends. I have a home in Rio. In my heart belongs to Rio. Eu tenho coração de carioca. So yeah, I have to come. I don't know when, but I hope I can come.
Fantastic, fantastic. So I would like to thank you a lot, Brent, for your generosity in sharing with us all your experience. It was really, really a teaching, a lesson for us to hear you. Gianluca, muito obrigado por possibilitar essa conexão nossa com o Brent, de trazer o Brent um pouquinho mais para o Brasil, ainda que seja online e tudo. Foi uma delícia. Obrigado por compartilhar com a gente também a tua história, Gianluca. Muito interessante.
Obrigado a você.
Obrigado, thank you, Brent, for participating. Obrigado, Cal, pelo convite, o pessoal do festival, Daniela, o Alexandre, a Mariana, obrigado.
Super, super.
Até a próxima.
Super. Gente, esse foi o nosso painel aqui com Brent Blair, com Gianluca Cosentino. Foi um prazer escutar os dois, foi um prazer ter vocês aqui com a gente. E siga aí, Festival de Petrópolis, segue, tem mais um monte de coisa para a gente ver, ok? Abraço, até.
Abraço,
Bye.
beijo. Bye, bye.